Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Conversations on Groong episode. Our guest today is none other than Mr. Armen Ashotyan, Vice President of the Republican Party of Armenia, the second largest parliamentary opposition party in the country. Mr. Ashotyan was imprisoned and later put under house arrest for political reasons and was the most prominent political prisoner in Armenia until very recently, when his house arrest was modified to administrative supervision earlier this month. This is, we believe, his first English language interview since he was released from house arrest.
But first, folks, an obligatory request for your support. We are the only English language podcast that is producing quality content that you are witnessing right now in a frequent and regular manner. And we wanted to thank you for your trust, and we wanted to thank you for your feedback and comments, but also we want to strive to earn your financial support so we can increase our reach and reach a wider audience. Supporting Groong, however, is not an ominous deal with the devil, like signing a mysterious 17-point peace document like our de facto leader is doing right now. There are no hidden preconditions, no midnight clauses, and definitely no requirement to rewrite your constitution. All we ask is that you head to podcasts.groong.org/donate and chip in through Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee or through a few other methods that are listed on our website. That makes you a sustaining member and helps us keep going.
Now, if you can't do that, no problem. We know that financial support is not for everyone. You can still cast your vote of confidence by commenting, liking, and sharing our shows with your friends and maybe your enemies. Think of it as your ballot for the 2026 elections. Only this one is going to count.
Thank you, folks, and on with the show.
Armen Ashotyan, welcome back to the Groong podcast.
Thank you very much for your kind invitation. I'm very glad to be back with you.
It's great to have you free.
My pleasure.
Great to see you.
I would say partially free, but it's uncomparable with the condition I was set previously in.
Mr. Ashotyan, on June 14, 2023, you were taken into custody and put into pretrial detention. You spent the next 25 months under either solitary confinement, imprisonment, or house arrest until very recently. For those interested in the details of Mr. Ashotyan's case, check out episode 343 of this podcast, where we highlight his case with our expert guest, Pashinyan. But earlier this month, Mr. Ashotyan, your house arrest got modified to administrative supervision. You are now able to leave your home during the day, and most importantly, you are able to talk to the press, something that you have been denied for the past 2+ years. And of course, there are some conditions attached to your administrative supervision as well. But to begin with, can you tell us about your experience over the past 2 years as a prisoner of the Pashinyan regime? And what did you do to deserve this treatment?
Thank you very much for your invitation. First of all, I would like to thank your podcast and all of you personally for your attention to the question of political prisoners in Armenia. It's not only my case, unfortunately. Political prisoners in Armenia were numerous from the beginning of Pashinyan regime, and now they are hitting the anti-record of more than 30% imprisoned by Pashinyan regime because of their political views, or even prisoners of conscience also are there. I mean, archbishops, etc. A second note I would make before main question to be collaborated on is that I am very sorry for my English. You can understand.
Your English is great.
No,
problem.
No, I mean that during this imprisonment, even under the house arrest, I have no chances to practice actively English properly. So I feel that it's not the shape I should be in. So I hope that you will be very conducive to the all mistakes of vocabulary missing that now I feel myself because of the lack of the practice. Because in prison, you wouldn't be able to practice even Armenian properly. So I'm not speaking about English. Now, coming back to the main question. So, I don't like to speak about my prison experience, not because it's very personal and not because it's something wrong or I'm not proud of. No, it's the pages of my life that I try to go through with dignity and the pride, but I don't like to speak about them because The problems I faced, the obstacles, the restrictions are nothing in comparison with other disasters, real disasters happened in my country during these 2 years. And I can't pretend I can't pretend, and I wouldn't do, to be a kind of a imprisoned hero, because the real heroes are now fighting for Armenian dignity in Baku prisons. The real heroes were losing their life during Artsakh ethnic cleansing. And so my personal story is nothing. It's very important for my family, for my friends, for my party, for myself. But it's not the kind of story I would like to sell out to the public as something sentimental or heroic, because it's zero in comparison with what Armenian people are facing, were facing during 2 years and are facing now. So you mentioned that, now I have some restrictions put on me, but the most important thing that I'm free to speak to you, to the press. But one restriction is still very, very influential on my political activity and the political activity of my party. I mean, I am still under the travel ban. And as you know, maybe I am responsible for the Republican Party's foreign affairs, international relations. And you can imagine that this restriction put on me and still kept by the court is harmful for our foreign policy activity abroad. And I would like to underline that my friends from my party are doing their best, trying to replace me in some international frameworks. But this travel ban is also very ridiculous because, even being accused in this very bizarre story of so-called money laundering, I was allowed once to go to the Vienna to participate in international seminar with Azerbaijani representatives around the Nagorno-Karabakh problem. So there is no fear that I will fly out of the country, flee of the country. So this restriction is also a restriction on my political activity, not on my personal life. I think that it's very clear that any regime like Pashinyan's regime, but we should say that this regime is unique. It's not any. It's unique on the territory area of Council of Europe. This regime came to the power under the most democratic mottos and promises Armenia ever heard. Now is actively transforming itself to the new autocratic regime. When I say new, it means that the autocracies are also changing, evolving, and Pashinyan is building up in Armenia this kind of modern autocracy where not only force but also manipulation, twisting administrative resources are widely used to cementing Pashinyan's grip to the power that we are facing now. So my detention was a part of this story of spreading fear, of putting people in the doubt, to show that if Armen Ashotyan, who is very far from being perceived as a corrupt person, and even during our rule of political Republican Party, so no, I were accused in many things, but not in corruption. So when this fabricated case has been put on the table, it meant that Nikol Pashinyan shows that he's able and ready to do everything, even out of box, out of order, out of law. And if me could be accused in this very bizarre case, so everybody should be afraid of him. And this policy of spreading fear, of spreading doubt, of making people disappointed is actively used now. And now when we face the detention of the most influential and rich Armenian businessman, I mean Mr. Samvel Karapetyan, when we face the detainment of two high-ranking spiritual officials. So when we face the detainment of the acting member of the parliament, I mean Mr. Artur Sargsyan, and member of the parliament of Nagorno-Karabakh, Mr. David Galestyan, the parents of the heroes of Karabakh War, etc. So it means that Pashinyan has no red lines at all, even in this kind of activity. So autocracy is blooming here in Armenia, and unfortunately, the relevant international institutions responsible for the reporting and noting and criticizing the situations in countries like ours are very silent. And so my case, why I'm so active now in promoting the fight for the freedom for other political prisoners, because I am one of them, I was one of them, and I am now out, and I could be and should be their voice outside of the prisons to raise awareness about these political persecutions, both in Armenia and abroad.
Mr. Ashotyan, I know you said you don't want to talk about yourself, but I think it's important to highlight it as a case study. As far as I know, out of your 2-year restriction of your freedom, you spent a lot of it in prison. You only got house arrest recently, but even when you were in prison, a lot of it, at least in the initial stages, was spent in solitary confinement. Now, I know we should move on, but I want to say, I want to ask, what was it like? How many times a month were you allowed to see anyone, your family members, your friends, and what is your thought about that kind of a strict restriction being placed on someone? I know it's not just yourself, because there are other political prisoners who get the same kind of treatment. I think even Baghdad Serpazan and our archbishops got solitary confinement. So, what can you tell us about that practice specifically?
There is a huge temptation to go sentimental, not about myself, but about my family, who were facing these challenges and were overcoming these challenges day by day, especially my kids, my wife, a parent, and family in the broader context. But I will stop here because, yes, I spent 15 months in the detainment center, in the prison, in solitary chamber, camera, or I don't know the exact English word. I didn't use it in my diplomatic activity before, so it's a new experience to find out the right words for the conditions we faced. And 11 months under the house arrest with very strict restrictions, especially towards the freedom of expression and freedom of movement, for sure. The conditions in detention centers all over the country are really terrible, and it's, frankly speaking, it's not only because of Pashinyan's regime policy, but it's a long-lasting problem from the first days of regaining Armenia's independence. So one of the prison has been built with the EU support in 2015, if I am not mistaken, Armavir Detention Center, and all other centers are very outdated with anti-sanitary conditions, etc. I should say that the staff of the prison where I was spending my months, more than a year, the staff was quite professional, so I have no claims to them, but the conditions, when I say condition, I mean actually everything. So starting from the infrastructure and with finishing with all other matters needed, even for the man imprisoned, for their at least dignified life. So this heritage, this legacy of Soviet era, detainment center, when every prisoner were object, not a subject, of this suppressive, undignifying treatment. So this legacy still persists, and it's another problem. It's not political, so I can't say that I was especially mistreated by these authorities, because these kind of conditions, bad conditions, this mistreatment, if we could call it like this, were widespread, and it's not because of the staff, but because of this legacy of old-fashioned, anti-human Soviet prisoner system. So,
Armen, you mentioned that there are dozens of political prisoners in this country still, and we're talking about people who have been arrested clearly for their political views and speech. Now, let's look at the political side of all this. It's common knowledge that before 2018, whenever there was an allegation of political imprisonment, European Union and Western diplomats in general went to great lengths to expose the cases, to the point of taking basically turn to attend the court hearings. As the second in command of the RPA, the Republican Party of Armenia, you have been widely known among EU parliamentarians and politicians, and thanks to the RPA's strong tradition of parliamentary diplomacy, several international organizations, including the EPP, the European People's Party, have issued statements in support of your case. Meanwhile, other political prisoners we've spoken with have all said that they've been consistently ignored by the EU and other Western diplomats. What are your thoughts about this? And do you consider the amount of support that you have received from the international community proportional to the support that would have been received in the past, especially during, let's say, the Republican administration?
It's dear Aspet, it's very painful question for me. Why? Because as a man who were responsible for also European direction of our interparliamentary and after that interparty diplomacy, I was and I am still proponent of real European values. So these values for me are based on the Judeo-Christian legacy of the Europe, based on the Enlightenment values of the Europe, based on the traditional, for me, conservative, democratic, Christian democratic values of the Europe. So I still believe in these values because Armenia was one of the cradle for these values as a Christian country. And these values are not geopolitical for me. So I were perceiving this kind of campaign to promoting these values as not geopolitical campaign, but it was a real civilizational campaign, raising of political awareness.
I agree with you. These are universal human rights.
Exactly. And they are not depending on the country, on the man, or in the geopolitical interest. EU, by me, were perceived for a long time as maybe the only geopolitical superpower focused not only on interests as US or Russia or China, but also on the values. And maybe I was quite naive at that time, thinking that the real politics depends not only the calculations, but also on the heart and the consciousness. So this was the reality. And the activity of European diplomats, international organizations before coup d'etat of 2018, yes, was political, was geopolitical, was political. And our government were accused several times for not respecting properly human rights, etc., also because of political reasons. We understand it clearly. I would like to thank all my European and international colleagues and friends. You mentioned European People's Party, and I would like also to add in International Centrist Democrat, IDC-CDI. It's a global organization for the Christian, democratic, and like-minded parties. So it's a kind of global EPP, and they were even more straightforward and consistent in reporting my case. So they were several statements, resolutions issued not only by EPP, but also by this very famous and known organization, IDC-CDI, I mean. And even recently, 2 days ago, they published another public statement about political prisoners in Armenia, using my case as a showcase and saying that, so it's not only Armen Ashotyan who was, or these are under political persecutions in Armenia, there are political prisoners in plural. Mm-hmm. And this organization will continue to monitor the situation for sure with our support and the help, assistance with information providing, technical details, etc. So the attention of internationals towards the backslide of democracy to Armenia, it's not only the question of political prisoners. So you can't say that Armenia is democratic in general, and there are only this question of illegal detainment. This democracy backsliding is a it's a total process.
Correct.
It also involves the question of freedom of expression, freedom of movement, freedom of assembly, media freedom. So we can now list a dozen cases of the violation of human rights and freedoms by Armenian regime in different spheres. There's a recent report of U.S. State Department on human rights issue in Armenia was quite disappointing, frankly speaking. I understand that globally in U.S. there is a shift of the attention towards insides, not outsides, and after Biden administration, which was more concentrated on the human rights issue globally, so positioning U.S. as a beacon of democracy and supervisor of democracy. Trump administration has no such kind of ambitions. Their ambitions are laying in other fields. But even considering that, this year, the report published by U.S. State Department was not inclusive, was very partial, was very politicized, and even cases listed there as examples of violation of human rights were not conclusive, frankly speaking. So it's obvious that Nikol Pashinyan's regime has now kind of d'accord or okay from the internationals because of his geopolitical services that he's providing to the West now.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm very disappointed not by U.S. Attitude, because United States embassy here was and up to now is very strong promoter of Nikol Pashinyan's power in our country. But I was disappointed with the European Union approach to this matter.
Armen, I wanted to know, in light of what you're saying, if any of these embassies, the U.S. or any of the European embassies, reached out to you and asked you how you're doing?
Dear Aspet, none.
That's very disappointing. But let me also add one more thing, because I'm a cynic about the whole concept of Western values. We should not exclude the Chinese, the Indian, other major power embassies. Did any of them do any kind of reaching out?
May I argue on, I understand your approach, but may I argue the term Western values? Because I wasn't promoter, and I am not promoter of Western values. I don't believe in Western values. I believe in European values based on the Christian democracy and based on the Christianity and the European civilization. So this is the difference, what we call the values. Values based on ideology, yes. Values based on the interests, synthetic values or native values. So this is another question, maybe the point for another dispute sometimes in the framework of other programs or podcasts, but you will
We'll be happy to take it up with you.
With pleasure. But speaking about the embassies, from the prison, I've written 2 or 3 open letters to the ambassadors. Ambassador of US received my open letter, ambassador of EU. So there was no, letters were not about my case. The letters were about their attitude to the values that they so insistingly promoted in my country for the 30 years. But so coming back to the geopolitics, yes, European Union in general is turning its blind eye towards what is happening in Armenia, because Nikol Pashinyan still is useful for them as a geopolitical affairist or geopolitical gambler, I would say even. That is why they know everything, they notice everything. They are deeply, deeply informed, and I have no doubt. I watched yesterday interview of current EU ambassador on Armenian media, and it was so artificial from his side to avoid this question from the journalist about democracy by backslide in Armenia. He was saying, you know what, literally the following. Oh, you know, we are promoting systematic reforms in the field of law enforcement agencies, police, courts, etc. And the particular cases are out of our mandate. Listen, particular cases, he said, are out of our mandate. It's very strange, because every violation of every human rights consists of particular case. So when you are speaking about the cases as examples of the violation, they all are particular. If not, your systematic criticism is not fact-based. So if your criticism is fact-based, it means that you consider cases. And when you say that everything is okay, but we are not go to the cases, it means that there is a two-layer lies, two-layer twisting in this public statement. And it is very, very disappointing. Should we stop our fight to opening their eyes, ears, or hearts? No, not at all. One of my interviews were devoted to this question. Our dear European colleagues, European ambassadors to our wonderful country should face Armenian society disappointment, anger, and demands to open their eyes. Because I think that, this symbol of three monkeys, nothing to hear, nothing to watch, see, nothing to speak. I don't think that this is a good placement of European branding in Armenia. So when European institutions, international institutions are behaving like these three monkeys in my country, it means that they are undermining the same values Armenian people believe in. Because when you hear their voices or geopolitical assessments of the situation, and you watch around and see the prisoners around you, you see that Artsakh question is so smoothly and glibly sold to the Azerbaijan as a geopolitical gift. When you hear the voice of President of European Commission about reliability of Azerbaijan as a
energy partner,
as a partner, when you follow the visit of Madame Callas, Higher Representative of European Commission on Foreign Affairs to Baku, and hear all these sweet pillow talks, you can't digest it yourself. Because yes, I want to be naive now, and I will demand myself in my political activity in upcoming weeks from European community what we deserve. I would also thank very many members of European Parliament who are quite honest about the situation in Armenia. And when I was in prison, it was a secret, but now I could deliver it to you. I were receiving letters from many European, a dozen Armenia, I think, in my case, dozen of European politicians, letter from them saying that they understand everything. They know that the case is fabricated. They believe in me. They trust me. They know me personally. But sorry, my friend, business as usual. So we can't say more. We want you to know the truth, that we know the truth, but we can't vocalize it. We can't raise the voice because you know why. So it was very
Armen,
frank.
I'm glad that they feel that way, but honestly, people who have influence at their levels need to speak up and do something about it. What's the value of having a position of power if they don't want to use it for good? Earlier,
Exactly.
Earlier, when I said the Chinese embassy, the Indian embassy, I didn't mean to exclude the Russian embassy. I should have also said to them, because human values are human values across the board. But there's another international community which I'm really interested about, and that's the Armenian diaspora. What was the diaspora's reaction and response to your time as a political prisoner? What kind of contact did you have? What kind of support did you feel you received? What do you want to tell us?
Thank you for the reminder about the part of your question I missed to reflect on. I mean, India, China, Russia. Why I had no expectations? Because India, China, Russian Federation never made human rights portfolio a part of their foreign policies. So it's not the question that they don't honor human rights or they have problems or don't have problems in their own countries. No. None of these superpowers ever reflected human rights approach in their foreign policies.
Right.
So Russian foreign policy, Chinese foreign policy, Indian foreign policy never depended on question of human rights. They never published reports criticizing Armenian situation with human rights before. So they have no such kind of pillar in their foreign policy. That's why we don't expect their involvement in this question, in this issue. As to the question of diaspora, again, following the idea of using my case as a showcase for other political prisoners and considering my partial freedom as a chance to vocalize the systematic problems in the whole, I should say that I never consider diaspora as an international organization. So diaspora for me is a part of Armenia abroad. So when we speak about international organizations, the reflection of diaspora attitude was never in my mind. So now I am surprised with your question in this context. But I felt support from some Canadian Armenians, the group of the medical doctors who has written open letter to the Canadian ambassador to Armenia. I have had support from the group of German Armenians, from the group of French Armenians, from Russian Armenians. But it's more, it was either personal or very fragmented support. So I can't say that any diasporal organization were reflecting the question of, and up to now, is reflecting the question of political prisoners and backsliding democracy in Armenia as a part of the portfolio. I don't feel it. Maybe it's because of my travel ban and because of the restrictions that I have no feelings from them, and I would like to be excused if I say something wrong towards
No,
the
not at all.
situation.
In fact, let me add to what you are saying there. It's very touching for me to hear you say that you do not consider Armenians the diaspora, the international community, that we are part of the nation, not inside the country. Because perhaps this is the reason why you haven't been hearing so much from the diaspora, but there's such a disunity, a separation between the Republic Armenians and the diaspora that it is very difficult to bridge that gap with the current setup.
You know very well, better than me, that it is up to now the part of the state policy to divide and impera, as the Romans would say. Divide et impera, what is Nicole Pashinyan is doing everywhere. He is doing this in Armenia, separating society into different groups. He is doing the same abroad with diaspora, trying to, from one hand, what he's doing is cutting off diaspora from motherland. Mm-hmm. And by other hand, he is trying to create a new diaspora, a new face of diaspora. Sorry, it would be even, it would be more correct to say not new diaspora, but new face of diaspora. And this is what is going on abroad. I feel it myself. Another problem with diaspora is very clear that I hope that nobody will be jealous from other countries. But as far as I understand the diaspora, the heart of Armenians abroad is beating in the Middle East. So the heart of Armenian diaspora, I mean, everything as a heart, is located in the Middle East. I mean, Syria, Lebanon, Iran. So this part of world was as a facade of Armenian diaspora's ideology. I don't diminish the role of American diaspora, Russian or French, but I think that ideologically the heart of diaspora were placed in the Middle East. And as we follow the situation, the erosion of Christianity in general in Middle East and the erosion of Armenian communities in Middle East, this kind of new wave of war or disasters all around the region is undermining also the influence and the spirit of Armenian diaspora located there. And it has its reflections in US, in Russia, in France, in Australia, everywhere. So this is my perception of the diasporal infrastructure and organizational ties
You know, you're
Still.
absolutely right. I think that aspect I hadn't really considered because over the past at least couple of years, since October 7, 2023, especially, it's been very difficult for those communities to survive. So it's not even like we are thinking about the Lebanese Armenians. Those Lebanese Armenians have had trouble surviving as just Lebanese or as Syrians, as Iranians, with all the wars that are forced on those countries right now. So there's been a period of time when the diaspora, at least ideologically, has been busy just with physical survival.
Exactly. I was meaning that it's not. It has been. It's not our fault that we are facing these challenges. So, but it has also influences the waves, this ripple effect, also all over the Armenian connections around the globe.
Mr. Ashotyan, you talked a lot about Christian values, and I want to just highlight for our listeners and also get your thoughts. One of the targets of the Pashinyan regime has been the Armenian Church. Several dozen prisoners are now being held, being accused of supporting the archbishops. What can you tell us about the specific aspect of the Armenian Church being under attack? What is the motivation of the Pashinyan regime? And lastly, I mean, we know that in general, we've seen polls where Armenians support church. And I believe, at least, based on my experience, I know that the church is very near and dear to me as part of my identity. So why do you think that these types of affronts to the church, especially the vulgar language used by this regime towards the church, and I'm not even saying this, specific cases of imprisonment, but just the attitude of the regime towards the church, why do you think it's being tolerated?
What is Nicole doing in Armenia? We could call by the term of social engineering. This awful experiment is taking place in our country of resynthesizing or recreating a new ideology, new methodology, and new Armenians. And when I say new, it means bad, because usually the word new means something good, something the perspective. No, new, I mean, Nicole Pashinyan is trying to finish with this social engineering, creating a new ideology for the nation, distracting all traditional values, our Armenianity, our Pax Armeniaca, we could say, were based on. And this is very clear that church was and still is one of the cornerstones of the traditional Pax Armeniaca. And it was predictable that it was foreseen that Nicole Pashinyan would attack church, because church is a kind of cradle of these values, a kind of watchdog of this Armenian traditionality. And church is preserving the memory of genocide. Church is preserving the memory of Artsakh. Church is preserving the memory of our Armenian memory and legacy. I mean, when I say Armenian history and culture, all the targets are Nicole Pashinyan is aimed to demolish. So the church, as archivarius of this legacy, it was very clear that one day Nicole Pashinyan will shot them. And what is he trying to do with cases of Mikhail Sarpazan and Bagrat Sarpazan is a part of the show, because church, as you said, is one of the most powerful institutions in our country, trustworthy institution, and institution on which Nicole Pashinyan has no influence, has no administrative leverage, has no constitutional provisions to influence on. And this makes him nervous, because as an autocrat who is swallowing new and new areas and new persons, subject, etc., he is very angry that he can't swallow the church. And this is a problem for him as an autocrat, and this is a problem for him as a man who is aiming to put his total authoritarian regime on every Armenian minds. So this authoritarianism is a new way of manipulating people. He's trying to control the minds and the hearts of the people. That is why on his every statement, he is touching this issue of identity. He's trying to twisting the history of identity, of nation building. So what we are facing now, Azerbaijan is making a nation building process, and it's very clear. Armenian regime is in the course of the nation diminishing process, demolishing process. And so church for sure is under protection of the God, and who are we to reflect on that? But yes, if you even believe in God, if you trust in God, if you put your life in hands of the God, you should do your part of the job. And Armenian society should, I think, do its part of the job of helping church, of keeping church out of Pashinyan's hands, of protecting the church and protecting the Catholicos as a symbol of, as a leader of Armenians all around the world, spiritual leaders at least. And our expectations here in Armenia are much higher than, for example, our Armenian church institutions like Patriarchy of Constantinople or Jerusalem or Cilician Patriarch are delivering. So I myself, it's not a position of Echmiadzin of the Holy See. It's my position of Armenia as Armenian citizen. I expect more from Armenian church abroad. We were talking about diaspora. Armenian church institutions abroad are not diaspora as well. And we should expect and should receive more support from Armenian spiritual institutions, not only, by the way, apostolic, because I deeply believe in the role of Armenian Catholic Church in creating and keeping Armenian identity. I deeply believe in the role of Armenian Protestant churches in keeping Armenian identities. Do you remember the Genocide Centennial State Committee? And this state committee was consisting of different representatives from different spiritual Christian organizations of Armenians, not only apostolic church representatives. And I want to see this framework, this pan-Armenian framework, non-state actors, but very influential actors that are standing together in preserving Armenian identities. Because if Nikol Pashinyan succeeds in ruining Armenian Apostolic Church, he would do the same with other national institutions in other congregations, I mean.
Well, we hope that this video gets in front of them.
Yeah, because for example, San Lazaro, Armenian Mechitarists. Who are there? They are Armenians. There is so many Armenianity in their archives, in their way of thinking, in their service, in their story, history. And I have no doubts that this cradle of Armenianity would say, would be another target from Nikol Pashinyan as well, because they kept the spirit of Armenia. The same is applicable, for example, to Beirut Haikazian University, the only Armenian higher education institution out of Armenia. This is a part of Armenian historical academic legacy. Do you think that Nikol Pashinyan will not try to harm them as well? So his fight against all traditional Pax Armeniaca will continue, and the Apostolic Church is just one in the row of his targets. And that's why we call for the more unification, solidarity. I do believe in that. I do believe that Armenians are able to topple Nikol Pashinyan's regime if they unite.
Mr. Ashotyan, let's talk about the so-called peace process, or what we refer to as managed capitulation process. Since the 44-day war, Pashinyan's dealings with Azerbaijan have been less diplomacy and more, I would say, project management, checking off Aliyev's demands one by one. Each concession only fuels bigger demands, turning Pashinyan into a little more than a project manager for Armenia's surrender. And you were still in prison when the final chapter came in September 2023 with the ethnic cleansing of Artsakh. But I wanted to get your thoughts on this whole process of what happened over the last, I guess, 5 years or 7 years. What are your thoughts about how Pashinyan and his people have so-called negotiated with Aliyev over especially after the war?
Nikol Pashinyan, by the way, is quite honest, surprisingly honest, in his recent statement on the occasion of Armenian Independence Declaration. When you go through his text published on that day, you would see that he is very, very honest. He acknowledged that he did in purpose. What he did with the negotiation process around Artsakh, what he did during the war, what he did after the 44 days war and in diplomatic activity was in purpose. So this surrender was planned before the surrender. This strange war, bizarre war, was brought to Armenia and to Armenians by Nikol Pashinyan in purpose. So
Armen,
Armen,
I understand what you're saying. I also agree with it, but 5,000 men gave their lives for this.
Exactly. For us, this is 5,000 pains. For him, it was the price he was paying to his geopolitical aventure and his deceit of the nation. So 5,000 tombs, we have 5,000 victims, but you know what? We have no 5,000 tombs because many are missing. Many are not identified even after 5 years of the war. So
yes. And the injured and all the families that are left
exactly.
injured.
This is price he paid. This is the barbaric price, the vandalistic price he paid for his geopolitical gambling. And he did it on purpose. And what makes their deaths even more painful, that their deaths were not devoted to the pride. Their deaths their sacrifices didn't bring honor to the nation, didn't bring, dignity, because they are forgotten. They are really forgotten. And only inside the families of the victims of the heroes of this war, they remember and worship them. On national level, after 5 years, we still have a single monument devoted to their memory. Even single monument. Yeah, for sure, in villages, on personal level, on family level, every family tried to memorize, to build some khachkars, to put some monuments, but on national level,
there hasn't been.
Single, there is no
That's
even
right.
single.
And there hasn't even been a real war commission finding. There hasn't been a real investigation as to how things went down.
Formally they build up this ad hoc committee on investigation of this war, led by notorious man called Andranik Kocharyan. Yes, but their report even still is out of, it's not on the table for it's not published, so we don't know even what is inside. But yeah, on national level, he's trying to create another atmosphere in Armenia. He is misusing the will to the life of Armenians, even after all this disaster, to fit his own political aims and goals. What he says, oh, you are going to the concerts of the Lopez or Dumikian or other crowded concerts or shows. it means that this is new Armenia. But he didn't consider that, yes, every man, even after the most painful disaster, wants to live. And his fight for the life, his first to the life, also dictating him to go to the concerts, to making weddings, to go to the birthday parties, etc. And Nicole is now using our daily based fight for the happiness, our daily based fight for the life, for the continuity of life, as a fundament, basics for his new ideology, saying that, you see, this is new Armenia, nobody is crying, nobody is memorizing victims, everything is...
He was trying to take credit for the fact that people showed up on Vardavar and were enjoying themselves.
Exactly. As they say in Armenian, we say in Armenia, you know, he is putting the people as a Chag and Bakhtavor, saying that, okay, this is not Armenia. This is a fight of Armenians for the better life. There's a fight of Armenians who are thirsty for the happiness, for the positive momentum in their lives. And either it's beer fest or wine fest or any other show or tour of any star, it's not a sign of another Armenia. It's a face of the same Armenia who, despite all these sacrifices, wars, losses, is still trying to revive, is still trying to survive. And this is what, for me and Nicole, is also very different. The perception of Armenian reality around here.
So, Mr. Ashotyan, we know that you've been very generous with your time, but we will terminate this interview with the hope that you can come back, because we have still a lot more questions. But I want to ask one specific question about the so-called peace process. We know that a 17-point document has been drafted with an unknown number of preconditions. And Pashinyan has kept declaring every few days that he is ready to sign. And voila, in Washington, they pre-signed it, or they initialed it. But we know that, as I said, there are many preconditions. Chief among them is that Armenia must adopt a new constitution. How realistic do you think this is? And it is because many say that because of this precondition, Azerbaijan does not want peace, and this peace document will never be signed. But how realistic do you think is the prospect for a constitutional change or a new constitutional referendum? And what happens if that referendum fails?
You know, there is a temptation, huge temptation to make a long speech about all the things you mentioned, but I will be concentrated on just two points. First, answering your direct question. For sure, Pashinyan will try to satisfy Aliyev's demands again. And new constitution is just one of them. So I am pretty sure that Aliyev will voice new conditions every time the last one is implemented, is fulfilled. So I see no perspective for the new constitution adoption, but there is no doubt that Nicole will try to do his best or our worst to provide the fulfillment of his demand. The second, talking about peace process, I will be very short to be clear to your audience. If this model of peace is so brilliant, is so just, is so fair, is so long-awaited and so, you know, a very good one, why this model of peace when one side is conceding everything and another side is demanding everything is so good? Why our Western partners are not implementing this kind of peace model in Ukraine, in other parts of the world? Why, in case of Ukraine, European leaders are saying constantly that there should not be peace agreement under the threat of Russia, under the aggression of Russia, under the use of force? There is shouldn't be territorial concessions to Russia. Peace should be just, etc., etc. In case
Should
of
be security
Armenia,
guarantees.
exactly. Yeah. Why, in case of Armenia, all these very good approaches are vaporized? Why? If this model is good, this model of peace should be implemented, should be fulfilled also in other conflict areas, at least in the Council of Europe area territory. I mean, Moldova, Transnistria, Ukraine, Georgia, etc., etc. So this model is not good. And they, the guarantors, the mediators, the partners, the protectors of Pashinyan regime are very well aware that this model is not good. It's not fair model. But they take a bingo because Pashinyan is a gambler and he is putting everything on his own power grip. And so I don't accuse international community in that sense, because they are just taking the opportunity, seizing the chance, historical chance maybe for them. So this peace process has nothing to do with peace. This is not just process. This is not fair process. We can go through details about the absence of many Armenian interests in the text, about absence of international guarantees, because even according to US State Department official website, the witnessing the signature of international agreement, it's political, not a legal act. And according to this official information of the State Department's website, it doesn't provide guarantees of implementation. So it's very clear. US is not lying. It's very honest and very open, maybe pragmatic. As I said to Armenian audience, Biden's administration surprised Armenians with their hypocrisy, but Trump's administration will surprise Armenia with their pragmatism.
Armen Ashotyan, I cannot wait to come back.
Thank you very much. Again, sorry for...
let's say shortly, to discuss more about
English.
This process.
Very sorry for my uneven English.
Your English has been great. Your English has been great. But I can't wait to come back and talk more about this peace process, and also as Armenia heads towards the 2026 parliamentary elections, we want to hear a lot more about the Republican Party and strategy.
Thank you very much for this chance, and I will wait for the next opportunity to meet all of you and speak about these important issues. Thanks a lot.
That's our show today. This episode was recorded on August 27, 2025. And we have been talking with Armen Ashotyan, who is the Vice President of the Republican Party of Armenia. From 2005 to 2007, Mr. Ashotyan was a member of the National Assembly and chaired the Committee on Foreign Relations. From 2009 to 2017, Armen Ashotyan served as Minister of Education and Science. And in 2017, Ashotyan was elected to the parliament again and served there until the December 2018 snap parliamentary elections. We're going to come back and talk to Armen Ashotyan soon, hopefully sometime next week, and start discussing the political landscape going forward rather than do a historical background about things.
And of course, if you have any questions that you would like to ask him, feel free to add them to the comments under this video, and we will make sure to read them, and and we will present those questions to him next time we speak with him.
Yeah, he specifically asked us to listen to listener comments and pass them on so that we can discuss them in our next show.
And before we bid adieu, just one quick reminder. We want to be more visible on Apple Podcasts. So if you don't have an account, please consider opening an account on Apple Podcasts and subscribing to us there. Downloading and commenting on our content there helps us improve our visibility and rise above the foreign-funded, alphabet soup agency-funded content that is currently, at the top there for Armenian news. So help us be visible there. We would really appreciate it. I'm Hovik Manucharyan from Yerevan, Armenia.
And I'm Asbet Bedrosyan in Los Angeles. Find us on social media at all the links that Hovik gave you, and we will talk to you very soon. Bye-bye.
Take care, folks.